Welcome to Influenced, a book lovers podcast hosted by book besties Tegan and Amanda.
Here at Influenced, we cover books that we've been influenced to read thanks to the internet, as well as books that have influenced us. If you haven't read this book yet, no worries. We'll start with a spoiler-free overview and give you a fair warning before we get into too much detail.
This podcast will talk about books ranging in age demographics, including adult content. Plus, we've been known to swear a time or two, so keep that in mind in case you have others around too. With that said, we're happy you're here.
I am thrilled to cover today's episode because we were influenced to read The Road of Bones by Demi Winters, which was released in 2023 by Library and Archives Canada. We couldn't find a word count for this one because this book is that much of a hidden gem right now, but it is starting to gain some notoriety. The audiobook at normal speed is about 21 hours. I found this book through TikTok. I wanted to shout out the girl that I found it from. Many of you might have seen her on TikTok. She is a lawyer who is well known for her iconic court transcript readings that are hilarious and just crack me up. However, she does have another TikTok account called Maisel Reb that is more geared toward the book talk side of things, and she said that this was one of her favorite reads of 2023, and I cannot thank her enough for finding this for us.
I had not heard about this book or seen it anywhere, so I'm glad that Amanda was so adamant that we read it together. I enjoyed it a lot. This is part of a 5-book series. The second book is releasing at the end of February 2024, and also sometime in 2024, we are going to get a novella told from one of the other characters' points of view. If you do read this book and are looking for something to tide you over until that second book is released at the end of February, the author has one of the chapters from Ray's point of view on her website, and we'll link that in the show notes for you.
After I finished The Road of Bones, I immediately went to Demi Winters' website to see when book 2 would be coming out, and I got so caught up in Demi Winters' site. This site is wonderful. There is not only the books that she has, which right now these are the only books listed on her website, which is a huge testament to her breakout novel, but also there is character art. There is profiles about them written as though they were dating profiles. There's also the map of the kingdom, both as more of a formal style map and a little bit more of an illustration style map. And her frequently asked questions section has a lot of great information about how she was inspired to write this book, as well as some information regarding the characters that we were able to actually use for our theories going into book 2.
One of my favorite things that we found on her website was all of the hidden meanings for the names of the characters in this book. That was really intriguing. I also was just really impressed with the Viking research and the resources that she provided. I thought that was impressive that she did that much research into it.
Just like our other episodes, we always start off with a short, spoiler-free synopsis for those of you that have not read the book. The Road of Bones is a Viking fantasy-styled novel, so we might butcher some of the pronunciation, but we are going to do our best. This is about Scylla, who is a 20-year-old woman who travels frequently with her father to avoid the Clearnar, an imperial force whose purpose is to eradicate the Galdra, or the magic-bearing people of Ilsador. While fleeing for her safety, she sneaks her way into the terrifying Blood Axe crew's wagon and begins a perilous journey of love and lies on her way to safety in the north on the Road of Bones. Scylla is tracked by Skreda, an assassin that is dispatched by the queen, and ultimately has to dodge and weave both through lies and through danger.
And not only are there Vikings and magical beings, there are also terrifying creatures like vampire deer, forest walkers, grim wolves, and wolf spiders. There's not a lot of description about these creatures, but at one point we learned that the wolf spiders have fangs that are the size of a human foot.
That's massive. I reread these creature descriptions for what little we do have, and I was so shocked and more terrified for our characters because of it. This is a second person perspective with a multiple point of view between four of the characters, those four characters being Scylla, Ray, Jonas, and Skreda. This is a mix between being plot driven and character driven, and I think that mix is done very well. It has a great world building and a very solid foundation with its magic system, and it leads to more being able to be developed in the next several books. The book was also great at really encompassing a character's essence through their point of view chapters. Sometimes you can read different POVs and feel like you're not necessarily getting a different character than the one you were reading before, but that is not the case in this book. Each character really hones in well on who they are and their descriptions.
All right, with all of that background information out of the way, it is time for us to give our star rating of The Road of Bones. How do we rate our books? It's great that you asked. We both have a similar star rating format. 5 stars means it was a great read. We're likely to read it again and again. Any criticisms we had were very minor and likely based on our own personal preferences. A 4-star rating means it was really good. There were some minor issues worthy of a deduction. 3 stars means it was enjoyable overall, but there were some larger issues. If we give it 2 stars, we really didn't like the book. There were glaring issues both with plot and characters. And finally, you'll probably never hear us discuss a 1-star read on the podcast. If it's that low, we probably didn't even finish the book. Amanda, how did you rate this one?
So, this was a 2-time read for me within a month and a half span, and both times were 5 out of 5 for me. There definitely could be some personal preference choices in the way people enjoy this book, but looking at plot and characters and motivations, man, I really loved this book. It is completely worth the hype. I will absolutely be continuing with this series, and I cannot shout this book enough from the rooftops. Everyone needs to read this. I am so glad to start seeing it gain a little bit more traction in the Bookstagram and TikTok community because it deserves every bit of it.
It does, absolutely. I think it needs even more hype than it's been getting. As you mentioned earlier, right now this is a hidden gem, and I see this blowing up within the next year. I rated this one 5 stars. It was phenomenal. The world building and the research that the author put into this was really impressive. This book is filled with plot twists, and it's split into 2 parts, and the pacing of those parts is a little different.
I'll agree with you on that one. They are very different.
Yes, to me, it was kind of like boiling a pot of water on the stove. And when you first put it on, it's slow to start. And you're like, man, this is never going to start boiling. And then all of a sudden, it starts boiling and it is overflowing, and you have water just pouring all over your stove. That is what this book was like for me. And once that pacing picked up in part 2, I could not stop reading it.
I would even say that while this book has 2 parts, I had almost forgotten that there were 2 parts of this book because I don't know if the 2 parts were really necessary. I see why it is 2 parts, but I think this might have been a choice that Demi Winters made just to help section out because this book is about 500 pages.
500 pages of characters that I absolutely adored. Mainly Scylla, Ray, and Hecla. Oh, they were my favorites. So I probably don't have to specify, but I will be continuing with the series. I've already pre-ordered book 2, and I cannot wait to read it. Book 1 left me with so much anticipation for what is to come in this series, and I am excited to see how everything ties together.
At Influence, we like to try to give some similar reading recommendations when we have them. If you like The Road of Bones, you may also like The Broken Earth by N.K. Jemisin, Throne of Glass by Sarah J. Maas, Mistborn by Brandon Sanderson, The Kingmaker Chronicles by Amanda Boucher, or even the Witcher series.
This is the part of our journey together where we are going to do more of a deep dive into the story, so this is your spoiler warning. If you have not read The Road of Bones, now is your time to stop listening if you do not want spoilers. If you don't mind spoilers, by all means, join us further.
Now we move on to our favorite exercise in this podcast where we describe our characters in 3 words. So for this exercise, we limited it to Ray, Scylla, and Jonas. Tegan, what 3 words did you give for Scylla?
Ooh, Scylla, okay. Optimistic, determined, and self-aware.
Oh, self-aware. I hadn't thought about using that one, but that's pretty good.
Thank you. What were
Okay,
your words?
for Scylla, I had trusting, chipper, and fierce.
Ooh,
And I struggled with trusting, but I ended up putting it on there because even though she is lying to the people she's with, she very easily ends up trusting the people that she is with and weaves in almost too much truth with her story as she continues to go on this journey. And there are times where you're like, no, maybe don't do that.
yes, true. And I do think at one point she may have even described herself as being too easily trusting. Can we do Ray next?
Yeah, let's do Ray.
Okay, for Ray, I put protective, private, and tough. And instead of private, I almost put secretive, but that didn't feel quite right. The man does have some secrets, but it's really just because he's a private person. He's only going to share what's necessary to share.
And I think the secrets that he has aren't just his secrets. So he can't give those kind of things away.
Oh, I'm excited to hear more about your
Oh,
thoughts on
I'm
that.
so excited to go down that rabbit hole. So for Ray, I put gruff, complicated, and respectful. And I use that word respectful as an antonym for Jonas. So that spurs me into, what did you put for Jonas?
I will tell you, the 3 words I would have picked for Jonas in part 1 are very different from the 3 words I would have picked in part 2. But because I will never forgive Jonas, I decided to go with my part 2 words, which were derisive, selfish, and angry.
I love them. Absolutely. 100%. I also chose words that were from more part 2 Jonas, which were possessive, arrogant, and authoritative.
Ooh, that's a good one.
I have
And
not had such a visceral reaction against a character that just makes you so mad. I'm trying not to spoil other books by referencing him to other characters that are very popular, but if you have read some very popular series that are out right now, there is a couple different characters, one for each, that he specifically reminds me of, and I think he might top my hatred of all of them.
I think I know which 2 characters you might be talking about, and I agree. I agree with you. I hate him a lot.
The the entitlement of that man
Mhm.
is astounding. Just
Yes.
astounding.
And you mentioned authoritative. I love that word so much because he does send off those authoritative vibes, yet he is in no position to be authoritative.
Exactly. And even his brother, Ilias, tells him, maybe your vision for our future is not the vision we need. And he just shuts him down and is so older brother, but not in a good way to Ilias. There were so many red flags from him. I got to the point where I was marking down every red flag and being increasingly disgusted by him. I have them annotated right here on my Kindle. So, one of the first big red flags for me was when he beat the ever loving crap out of the male that pushed Scylla while they're in that first town. I wrote, fucking male bullshit. And
Yep.
then from there on, you just continue to get more red flags. He talks about how he cannot stand to be disrespected. And he said, quote, I will not stand to be disrespected, and I will not stand to see you disrespected. He'd worked hard to get to this place of honor amongst warriors and would do what it took to retain his standing. And isn't that foreshadowing to what happens later on?
Ugh, yes.
And then, when he makes her that talisman and she wears it, and it's as if he felt like he was possessing her. He has lines throughout the book of he will make her his. Just, ugh. So, but it makes you wonder, why do you think Scylla fell for him? Or did she? Or was it just distraction for her?
I think it started out as her just wanting a distraction. She was grieving the loss of her father and life as she knew it. She was lonely, and Jonas was right there to give her attention. That attention really started out with this sort of banter between the two of them, which I think Jonas was doing because he's an asshole, and Scylla mistook it for being something more playful than what it actually was. The turning point when she started to think maybe there could be something between them, in my opinion, was when he saved her from the Iron Ravens. And then he also helped her when she was having a nightmare. But even Hecla warned Scylla that Jonas was not good for her. He doesn't treat women well. And Scylla seemed to think that she was an exception up until the point when she clearly wasn't. It broke my heart later in the book when Scylla realized he truly wasn't a good guy. And in one of her point of view chapters, this is a quote directly from the book, Jonas had been a comfort to her, a balm to her grieving heart, but things had taken a troubling turn, and Scylla did not have room for more problems in her life. If only our girl had realized it sooner.
Yep. And I think there's the two sides of him, right? Before everything went down and he felt betrayed by her and the death of Elias, there could have been that good portion, but he really does have that dark stain to his soul that we realize as readers that Hecla and Ray were referring to. But I think Scylla just took their warnings into consideration as, oh, he's just kind of a player, but I can not necessarily change him, but I'll be a distraction, and now he wants me as the only person, not realizing that, no, the warnings were a little bit deeper than that.
Yes, and I would say even when he decided that he wanted Scylla and didn't want attention from these other women, it wasn't because he liked Scylla for who she was or liked her as a person. Like, it didn't come from this good place. It came from this possessive and obsessive place of, oh, she's my prize. I've got my eye on her, and I will not settle for anything else.
Scylla was obviously just too optimistic about what could be between her and Jonas. But ultimately, she is this Sunshine character. I mean, her nickname is even Sunshine from Ray, which plays on the grumpy versus sunshine trope. What were your thoughts about that? Because I have never really read much of grumpy versus sunshine before. That is not me as a person, so I found it very interesting to read. There was even a line about her being such a enthusiastically happy morning person, and I just wrote down, I cannot relate, because I will be more than happy to sleep in as late as possible. But then there was this other scene that just emphasizes how sunshiny she can be when she is getting chased by Scrata, and she uses the words, oh, porridge, when her cloak gets caught. And I'm at that moment thinking, oh my god, you can't even throw out a fuck in this situation? But I think her personality was so much fun as this dichotomy with a warband that is rough, gruff, and kind of angry all the time.
Yes, I thought it was a really good contrast to the people she was traveling with and how, they kind of toughened her up in ways and she softened them in some ways as well. So I thought that was beautifully done. I'm also not as familiar with the grumpy versus sunshine trope, but I really enjoyed it, particularly between Ray and Scylla. And in contrast to your feelings there, I felt like Scylla was really relatable for me because I am just that really optimistic person, always finding the silver lining in everything. I'm an Enneagram 9, which is the peacemaker, and I felt like that might be where Scylla falls on that as well. And I enjoyed reading about her character.
I think you and I make our own grumpy sunshine trope because between the two of us, I definitely am more of the cynic and the grumpy person, and you're much more the happy, help me find the silver linings type of person.
Yes, I'm always here to help you find a silver lining. And you're always there to give me, I don't know, that practical, logical, bring me down to earth kind of advice.
Happy to do it.
We've talked a lot about Scylla at this point. Let's talk a little bit about the other big female character in this book. What were your thoughts and expectations about Skreda?
I loved her and I loved to hate her. She is terrible, but you have this level of empathy and understanding for her because she ultimately did what she needed to do to survive. But the moment I knew I don't think there's going to be much of a redeeming arc for her is when you learn about her background and the fact that she essentially sacrificed her sister for herself. And that's when I said, okay, I don't think that there's going to be a redemption arc in this story because she gave me very much originally Manon vibes from the Throne of Glass series. And was expecting a similar arc and then it just did not happen. But she's not completely black and white because when she is killed, she has that relief with Scylla and tells her, "Don't leave me," while she's dying, and just kind of broke my heart for her there for a minute, but ultimately though, she was pretty terrible.
I think you had a lot more realistic expectations for Skreda's character than I did. I was back and forth throughout the whole book. Like, is Skreda good? Is she truly bad? And I had this hope that maybe she was a double agent, that she was part of a revolution working undercover for the queen and was secretly trying to save Scylla, that she wanted to be the one to find Scylla rather than anyone else working for the queen because she was going to help Scylla remember who she was and then bring her in to like fight this revolution. No, that was very wrong. It turns out she was just a crazy assassin who was willing to stop at nothing to prove her worth to the queen.
I very much loved having her chapters in there, though. Many times you'll see those villain chapters in there because they're going to have a redemption arc or there is more to their character. And sure, there is here, but ultimately she was selfish and had her own selfish needs. But I loved that we had that in there because you don't necessarily get that with a lot of books. So you mentioned the queen, and you and I briefly discussed this when outlining. And I'm just baffled where you're going with this. I need to know the queen, you think she's morally gray. I
I
need to know
think
your thoughts about this.
I do think that's a possibility. So I was going through trying to put together all of the information we're given about the queen and her character. We don't know a whole lot about her. We know that she was a princess of Norvaland, and she had 6 siblings who were all killed when the Arcans invaded her territory. She alone was saved and taken to be King Ivar's bride. So she's not his wife by choice. We also know she's gone against him, directly violating his laws after he ordered all the Galdra to be executed, and she has been gathering up Galdra, quote, for her own purposes, unquote. She doesn't play a hand in helping to run the kingdom, and she raised Saga. We still don't know why she wants Scylla. We do know she wants her alive. I'm sticking with my headcanon here that a revolution is coming. So I think the queen might undermine King Ivar, and there will be some sort of challenge for the throne or like taking back the kingdom, either for the queen's kingdom where she's from, Norvaland, or for Scylla's people. But I was totally wrong about Skreda, so what do I know?
I'll go with you about half on that. I do think the queen is bad. I think she's in that Skreda territory of she's just trying to selfishly undermine the king. I think you're right there, but for her own purposes. I don't think it will be to help Scylla and her family regain this. And I do wonder if we're going to eventually get a kind of three-sided war going on between the king and his kingdom, the queen and her endeavors, this kind of small rogue band, as well as a rebel group that I think might be happening in the background.
Ooh, yeah, I can see that.
So I think that she'll fall in this, you understand where she's coming from, but she, like Jonas, like Skreda, is an ultimately selfish character that should not be on the throne.
So, how do you think Scylla being royalty plays into this?
I was sort of surprised by this twist, even though looking back, I probably shouldn't be. This is a trope that is often used, but I think it goes to how well Demi Winters wrote this, where I almost didn't expect it, despite the fact that this royal family and its background was brought up prior, and those things usually play a role in a plot line when they're brought up. And yet, I was surprised in the best way possible. I'm excited to see how it plays out, and I do think that we will ultimately see Scylla and or Saga in the ruling seats once more.
I think we will too. There was a quote in the book that I thought was really important, and I think it might come into play later. It said the Volscics had ruled Isildur for hundreds of years, the crown passing down through bloodlines, regardless of if a son or daughter bore the blood. And that's different from how the kingdom is currently run, because King Ivar's throne will only be passed down to a son. However, when King Ivar killed the previous royal family, when he killed King Volsic and Queen Volsic, he didn't kill their daughters who were eligible to take the throne. They're still the rightful heirs.
Dude made a mistake. He's gonna come to regret that later.
Mm-hmm.
I also love this trope where there's the rightful heir out and about. We see that even with like Rapunzel. I love this trope.
Yes, I cannot wait to see how things play out. I think book 2 is going to be really intense.
So, going along with the royalty family thing, what was your reaction when we found out that the girl she's seeing in her visions slash hallucinations, who was not a ghost, was an extension of her consciousness and a result from the skuld leaves that she was taking?
I was surprised to learn that because I thought the girl she was seeing was, like you mentioned, a ghost, or that, Scylla's magical ability was to be able to see things that weren't there.
I agree. I thought, oh, Scylla has powers, but seeing the dead was her powers.
That's exactly what I thought. And I was also surprised to learn that the leaves were basically Viking drugs.
I absolutely loved this plot line. It was a much more complex plot line than I originally anticipated, because you think about it, her adoptive father is giving a young child drugs for a significantly long term that have well-known side effects to them and can cause a lot of problems. He obviously determined that the risks of those drugs do not outweigh the risk of Scylla being caught and having her power.
Yeah, Scylla thought she was taking these drugs, thought she was taking the leaves to cure her headaches. And she finds out later on that the leaves are actually causing her headaches and causing her to have these visions. They're highly addictive and recommended for short term use only. So he was actually giving her these leaves to suppress her magical abilities so that she wouldn't be found by the Clanar.
Plus, we learn that these leaves are taken by the new god fanatics because it makes them feel closer to God. And I wonder if in book 2 we are going to get a little bit more about that in that society and the detriment of using these leaves for long term.
I wouldn't be surprised if that comes up. I think something else we'll see explained a little bit more thoroughly in book 2 is the leaves that have the opposite effect. They were only briefly mentioned in this book, but they force powers to the surface.
Yes, and we ultimately see these leaves be used by Ray toward the end of the book when we learn he is this murderer we've been looking for, and he takes these leaves to help replenish his powers. And we learn that the side effect of these leaves is that he is going to pay for it in sleep later. But also, going with that, we learn that Ray's this burning from the inside type of murderer. And Tegan, were you expecting that? Because I was not expecting that.
No, that totally came out of nowhere and caught me by surprise. I really want more of Ray's history and the Slatrari's history. That's what he's legendarily known as, the Slatari, the murderer who burns people from the inside out. Oh, I can't wait to learn more about it.
I expected that he would have magic based on the interactions with Scylla and him seeming sympathetic toward the Galdra, but I was not expecting that twist because I kept thinking, when did he have time to do this? While everybody's sleeping, he's just like, I gotta go find all these shitty people to kill. He also had a very good, almost supernatural sense of knowing when danger was around him, so it makes me wonder if he was pegging that they were being followed or that there were other bandits on the road and trouble was nearby, so he took care of them when everybody was sleeping.
Could be.
When the catalyst is taken by Scylla in that sweet role when she was in custody, we see an emergence of her powers more than we ever had before. Do you have thoughts or theories about what's happening with her?
I do a little bit, but mostly I have a lot of questions. So we know that she's an Ashbringer, which is a certain type of magical ability that has something to do with fire or light. And she has this light that comes out from her arms, but she's cool to the touch. And it's insinuated that that is abnormal for an Ashbringer. And also, when she's fighting with Skreda, she reveals that she has breaker intuition as well. And Skreda's really surprised by that. So Scylla seems to be a little bit different from your standard Galdra. Also, this is where I have a lot more questions because when she was fighting with Skreda, Skreda told her she wouldn't be able to control her magical abilities until she had had her heart and mind united and go through what is called a cohesion rite. So I'm very curious about that.
So, I do not think she is an Ashbringer. We do get reference of her being one, but they're not necessarily said in confidence or explicitly saying that you are an Ashbringer. When she is with Commander Volg, he says to her, "You seem to be an Ashbringer, but your skin is cold to the touch. What is this? I've never seen this before. You glow." So I went back and was really picking apart any element with her powers, and I don't have a name for this. I don't necessarily know what's going to happen there, but I wonder if it's something related to the moon. And here's why I think that.
Oh,
Because,
interesting.
because she has a crescent moon shaped scar, cold like ice, which the moon is. She has a bright light like moonlight, and her nickname, and we get mention of them, are moonflowers.
Oh my gosh. I think you might be onto something
I
here.
think I might be onto something now. What that is, I don't know. I'm wondering if it's tied to the old gods somehow, if that's a family trait that has been killed off essentially. I don't know. But I kept finding these little details connecting it to the moon somehow. Now, my only caveat or question would be this blade breaker intuition that Skreda mentions to her in their battle with each other. And she asks, did you have a twin? Because you seem to have this intuition, assuming Ashbringer, as well as this blade breaker. And I don't know where to go from there. Does she have a twin?
Okay, I think she might. And here's the thing. Skreda was able to access her twin's ability. And we learned that that is a thing. If you have a twin, it's something about more than just the womb is shared when your mother is pregnant with you. So they're able to share each other's magical abilities. And we see that Scylla has these two abilities, what appears to be Ashbringer and also this breaker intuition.
But then I wonder,
That
is it that? Or is it this unique power that's actually like unique enough that people don't know what it is and she didn't have a twin?
it could be that. But the reason I think that it might be a twin is because Saga is so surprised when she learns that Scylla is alive and she says, how is this possible? Because their parents and Scylla were put on the pillars and killed, and then their bodies were on display for a year. So obviously that body wasn't Scylla. Whose body was it? I think it might have been a twin. That leaves me with the question though, if it was a twin, how come neither Scylla nor Saga seem to know anything about it?
It's such a good question because I'm torn between she had a twin and that twin was unfortunately the one killed in this takeover. But why would Saga and Scylla not remember that? Scylla remembers Saga to an extent, right? She is the little girl in her vision. Is the memory maybe from trauma because she was ripped from her? But then where was this twin in this situation? Or if she had a twin, because we learned that the powers are absorbed in the womb, did the twin die as a baby, maybe? Or, unfortunately didn't make it to term? And then who was on the pillar, like you said? And did they pull a very terrible move and found a child? There's
If
just so many questions that have no answers right now and could go a million different ways.
I know, and I don't know what the right answer is here. We could theorize all day long, but I think we're just going to have to read book 2 to find out.
One thing I'm hoping that we get the answer for in book 2 that we've been left hanging is this magic mist and the missing people that we assume are killed from these mist attacks. Do you have any thoughts as to what this is or what may happen?
I really don't know. I initially thought maybe Ray had something to do with it, but I'm not totally sold on that idea because his ability to burn people from the inside out is different than this mist that seems to have a heartbeat and is causing livestock and human bodies to vanish.
I agree that there's not a lot of information and that it is hard to theorize about it right now. But I do wonder if it is tied in with this new god of their kingdoms. And I wonder if these attacks are correlated with the creature attacks that are happening are tied to Scylla because the attacks that happen with the forest walker that should have been peaceful and unless provoked, the spider wolf, and I believe one more, but I cannot remember off the top of my head, all happened with Scylla around.
Yeah. Were you thinking of the Grimwolf attack, like when
Yes,
she was captured and it killed her captors but left her alone?
yes.
Yeah.
So I was just looking back through the book, and it talks about the sun cross and the mist. The sun cross is associated with the Volsic family and the old gods, so it makes me wonder, is this mist that's happening actually a bad thing? Is it taking out people that are loyal to King Ivar and this new god Ursur? I didn't even think about that until just now, that this mist may not be a bad thing for Scylla.
Oh my gosh.
But I wonder, though, if there's this dichotomy between the old gods and helping her and the new god, who I wonder is even a god or a bad force or something, and that might play in together coming forward. Because I wonder if there is some old god protection going on with her and whatever maybe this power is, because we see the Grim Wolf situation happen, and then there is a mention of an eclipse at the beginning, and it was short lived. And I'm like, well, was this natural or was this God oriented? I don't know. I am down a rabbit hole that I just, with very little information, that I just am excited for.
I forgot about the eclipse at the beginning of this. Oh, that's
And it
so
happened when
interesting.
she was a kid, too, the day that her mom was captured and admitted to being Galdra in place of Scylla. An eclipse happened as well, which is why she forgot the dill and had to go back for it because an eclipse happened. I'm like, well, eclipses don't happen that frequently. Like, you have many, many, many years before like full eclipses are going to happen in your area again. So I'm like, is something happening here?
Yeah, that is fascinating. And I wonder too, with the sun cross symbol being attached to the Volsix, sun cross and eclipse, like I'm kind of wondering if those go together as well.
Right? Wouldn't the sun gods be able to control an eclipse, maybe? So I have one more question regarding theories that I want to ask you about, and that's about Ray. Because I have some theories about him, and this may just be me, but do you have some theories about him? Because we've ended now with Scylla on this journey now with Ray to safety, but they both don't know the truth about each other still. So,
Right.
what do you think's going on there with him?
Ray has a lot of history that we don't know about, and I'm very curious to learn. A few of the questions that I have about Ray and his history are, who are these people that he knows that could provide safety for Scylla? Book one ends with them traveling through the canyon and going to this place we haven't heard of to find the people that Ray is connected to. And I'm also wondering how Matthias and Ray's father were connected.
Those are great questions. I have the same ones that I am curious about. Now, with Ray, I think he's a rebel. We've gotten mention of the rebel group a couple different times, and there is a line that happens in the book where he is wondering about the creatures attacking in the mist, and Ray says, Harpa might know. The thought made his chest burn. No more side trips, he vowed. So we get
Ooh.
this random name. It only comes up one time from Ray, and he decides not to even go down that road. So it makes me wonder if he did or does, continues to, or if that's been severed, have ties with this rebel group. Because obviously he's Galdra. He's not safe with the current monarchy, and he could very well be part of this rebel band, and that's where they're headed. So it makes me wonder if they are headed to this Harpa character in book 2.
Oh my gosh, maybe. And there are a couple times in the book when Scylla I think she's mostly teasing him and says, "Oh, you are a bandit, aren't you?" And bandit could be synonymous with rebel.
Exactly. And there was another line, and I cannot remember the spot specifically off the top of my head, but somebody asks, "Do you think it was the rebels?" And Ray answers very clearly, "This was not from the rebels." I'm like, how would you know? Unless you were a rebel. Obviously, we just have so many questions. Are excited for book 2, and we could probably spend 3 hours going into many other things. I have questions. Tegan has questions. What other questions do you have, Tegan, that we have not talked about?
Okay, you know I'm a hopeless romantic, so my question is, do you think Ray and Scylla will be endgame?
I think so, but only until they are honest with each other. And that is actually one of my questions is how are they going to react when they find out the truth about each other? When Scylla finds out that he's been murdering these people and that Scylla is actually royalty and is being hunted by the queen. I don't think anything can happen between the two of them until that happens. I hope that it goes well because I think there's going to be a lot of anger involved, and I do wonder if we're going to get a little less sunshineness from Scylla.
Possibly. I think a lot is writing on whose side Ray is fighting for. What is his involvement in this battle for the throne? And why is he killing people? What are his motivations? I think that's going to play a big factor in how Scylla responds. And I think this might be set up so that Ray and Scylla could bond over being the only people who know each other's secrets once
Mhm.
they are honest with each other.
We learned from Demi Winters that there's a secret to both of his names, and I didn't go too far down this rabbit hole because I don't want to spoil anything for myself, but that Galtung last name, when you do a very quick search, it was a noble family line. So I'm wondering if there is a noble family line that was under the Volsix rule that he might have been a part of.
That would make sense then with his dad having a connection to
Matthias.
Matthias. Yeah, and maybe we'll also learn why Matthias raised Scylla.
Because in my head, I'm picturing Matthias was a trusted guard of the family and took Scylla away and kept her safe. And that Ray's father was also a member of this guard because we know his dad was killed.
Oh, I think you're onto something again here. But I'm not ready to move on from the romance of Ray and Scylla and the potential for that. I could tell at the end of the book that Ray was starting to have feelings for her. And I loved this part when he was in Copa and trying to rescue her. He had this moment where he was thinking about her and he was like, "She's so clever, my girl." And then he had to correct himself and he was like, "Oh, she's not your girl."
I also highlighted that moment, and I also made a note to think about what a difference between him and Jonas in this situation, because Jonas was very much your mine, and this was
Yeah,
very, even before they were fully together, this was such a beautiful moment about showing how much better Ray is for her.
I wholeheartedly agree. And he also starts to overlook her annoyances, which is something you do when you're really fond of someone, when you put on those rose tinted glasses. You know, one of the things he had been annoyed with through the whole time she'd been with him is that she has this tendency to hum. But when they're on horseback and they're riding through the canyon, he tells her that it wouldn't kill him if she started humming.
It was so cute, and you know, like, she's just been through hell. So he just does this thing to let her feel a sense of peace and normalcy, and it was so cute.
It was adorable. I loved it so much. So, you know, the hopeless romantic in me is rooting for Ray and Scylla to be together forever.
I will agree with it, though, until they get their shit together and tell each other the truth.
Yes.
So one of the questions I had came toward the end of this book, where the queen is talking to Alfson, and she asks him and the war band, and he says, "I await their reply." Now, maybe this is just some random war band, but I'm also worried. Did she maybe reach out to the Blood Axe crew and is trying to get them on her side? Because obviously they're now upset with Scylla. She lied to them for many, many weeks on the road, put them in danger. Is it possible we could get some betrayal from them like we did with Jonas?
Oh my gosh, I didn't even think about. And with Ray, their leader, not being there with them, they are sort of susceptible.
I'm
Yikes.
scared. I'm terrified.
Big yikes.
And then my other question is, what is the cohesion rite? And is it something we're going to see Ray help her through?
Oh, I love that.
He seems
Yes.
pretty knowledgeable of magic. And there's a scene when she is coming through her withdrawal of the leaves for the second time. She has a dream of smoke and ash choked her throat. And it was essentially almost like Ray's power. So I'm wondering if that protection connection is there and he's going to help her with her magical journey.
Oh my gosh, I love that theory. I hope you're right. Cannot wait for book 2.
Me too. And I wonder if we'll see Meta, the girl in the cell with Scylla that was being held. Like, she was being held for a long time while other people were coming and going, but she says she doesn't have magic, but she was being held for that long. I'm wondering if she'll end up being important because Scylla wanted to go back for her, but unfortunately they couldn't. So I think there might be something there too, but I could also be grasping at straws.
There could be, because Ray told her he knew people who might be able to rescue Meta. So we've had a lot of really good discussion today. Before we close out this episode, I want to know, what was your favorite moment in this book?
The scene with Cracky and trying to drink him under the table and playing the truth or drink game. Oh my gosh, I cracked up. You realize there's this spark between Ray and Scylla. It's the moment when, your fearless leader and the grumpy character learns that there is lies happening, and yet he's not completely angry about it. And just anytime, if you've ever drank, you think, oh, I can handle this. I can drink this much if you've never have before, and just getting your ass handed to you.
What does it say about us that our favorite moments in this book were drinking and cussing? Because my favorite moment was when the Blood Axe crew was traveling together and they told Scylla one of the rules for the crew is that you have to cuss. And wholesome Scylla, who apologizes for tripping over rocks, did not feel comfortable cussing. But Ilias, bless him, came up with all of these hilarious cuss words. That scene was hilarious. It legitimately had me laughing out loud.
I listened to that one on audiobook in between my second read. I was laughing while I was at work because of it.
I'm going to need you to share that with me because I don't own the audiobook, but I'm sure that scene is far more hilarious listening to it than reading it.
Plus, the narrator is English, and it just sounds even better.
That sounds fabulous.
Okay, that is all we have for our discussion today. Thank you so much for joining us. We would love to hear your thoughts on The Road of Bones, and if you're going to read book 2 if you've already read it. If you would like to connect with us, please consider following us on TikTok and Instagram. We have the handle @InfluencedBookPodcast. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please take a moment to rate us wherever you get your podcasts.
We look forward to our next episode when we will be discussing The Serpent and the Wings of Nights. Until next time, happy reading!